Hi, it's Serena from highlyrecommendedbooks.com, and I'm here today to tell you why I loved and why I highly recommend Christina Henry's new book entitled Horseman, A Tale of Sleepy Hollow. And now you need to think back to, 8th grade American literature and remember The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, that story written by Washington Irving. Now, he wrote not only The Legend of Sleepy Hollow, he also wrote the Rip Van Winkle stories. Now, what you may not recall, and what is really fabulous, is these stories were written in 1820, so 200 years ago. And they are still really, really great stories. And what Christina Henry has done essentially is take Washington Irving's story and has imagined it as the first book, and her book is the sequel. So to understand her book, you need to understand Washington Irving's book. Now, Christina Henry does a really great job of including the information that you need, that background from the original story. It's all included in her story, but in order to help you figure out if it's the kind of book you like, I'm going to just give you a brief rundown. And I'm doing this now, actually, particularly because the original was a spooky story, and this one is a spooky story. I think that Amazon puts this book in the gothic horror genre, which I think it would have put Washington Irving's story as well. So keep that in mind. But I think it's perfect for Halloween, and that's why I'm doing it today. Anyway, in the original story, there is a love triangle between three people. Number one, a young woman named Katrina Van Tassel. Her father's the wealthiest man in the area, and so whoever marries her will inherit, she's an only child, will inherit all that wealth and property. She has a childhood friend. His name is Brom Bones. That's kind of a nickname, but everyone uses that throughout both stories. Brom Bones is handsome and agile and witty and a great rider, and he has been in love with Katrina since he was a little boy, and it is his intent to marry her. But there's a new guy in town. His name is Ichabod Crane. I'm sure you recall that name. And Ichabod Crane is new to town. He's the schoolmaster, and he too wants to marry Katrina. Brom Bones doesn't care about the money. Ichabod Crane does. This is what he's seen as his way of solidifying his place in town. He won't have to work very hard. He'll get everything when he marries her. And so there's this competition between the three of them, and on one particular night there's a harvest celebration, and Ichabod Crane asks Katrina for her hand in marriage, and she says no, and that annoys Brom Bones. Later that night, Crane is riding home, and he is a firm believer in the supernatural, and the whole town, according to Washington Irving, is somewhat enveloped in a mist that keeps apparitions and ghosts going, and that the whole town is probably haunted. And the primary apparition that people in Sleepy Hollow refer to is the Headless Horseman. And the Headless Horseman is supposed to have been the ghost of a Hessian. The Hessians were German mercenaries who fought in the American Revolutionary War. And this particular apparition was apparently a soldier, a Hessian, whose head was blown off by a cannonball. And he rides at night, cloaked in black, carrying his head on his saddle in front of him. Ichabod Crane is riding away from the dance, having just been rebuked by Katrina, and he passes a strange apparition on a magnificent black horse, and he worries, oh my gosh, is this the Headless Horseman? And he starts urging his horse to go faster as he realizes, yes, it is the Headless Horseman. And he knows that there's a bridge ahead, that if he can get to that bridge, that everyone has said the horseman cannot go across that bridge, so he'll be safe if he meets it. And he's never seen from again. And what is found right by the bridge is a broken pumpkin, and no one knows exactly, but Washington Irving hints to us in that story that it was not truly the Headless Horseman. It was Brom Bones pretending to be the Headless Horseman, and that he threw that pumpkin, pretending it was his head, at Ichabod Crane, knocked him off his horse, and he was so embarrassed that he left town. So 30 years go by, and this is where Christina Henry's story begins. Brom Bones and Katrina are married. They're raising their teenage granddaughter. Her name is Bente, and her parents both died, which is why she's being raised by her grandparents. And Brom Bones and Katrina are, of course, now the most prosperous people in town. Bente is a young woman. She's, I think, about 16 when the story begins. But she does not see herself as a girl, has no interest in girl things, and is essentially accepted in the town and considered to be a teenage boy, which I think is a really cool way for Christina to handle these kinds of things. Anyway, Bente has and Bente asks everyone to call her Ben, as a matter of fact. But Ben asks everyone in town what they know about all of the legends, because she has some, I don't know, call her a ghost whisperer, but she hears and sees and feels things that not necessarily everyone in the town does. And she hears these whispers from the Horseman. And I don't want to give anything else away, but there is a malevolence that has newly settled, had nothing to do with what was going on 30 years prior, when Brom Bones and Katrina were with Ichabod Crane. But there is a malevolence. Young boys are being killed in bizarre ways, and their bodies are disintegrating, and she's trying to figure out what happened. She's trying to protect herself, her family, her townsfolk, and it is just a really fun, creepy, spooky, gothic horror. And I highly recommend Horseman. I actually told my husband it was one of the favorite books I've read this year. I liked it that much. And if I had to compare it to anything, you're probably familiar with The Turn of the Screw by Henry James, written, 150 years ago. And then it was rewritten this year by Ruth Ware. Her book was called The Turn of the Key, and it took the very same spooky gothic horror story and updated it to present. Now, This book doesn't update to present, but it updated 30 years, and it's just a really fun book. So I think you'll love it. Don't forget to go on my website, sign up for the newsletter, be eligible for a book box. Have a great day and keep reading.